Hey there guys, this is Reckles with WTBGold. Big news today. Last BlizzCon, I asked a question at the World of Warcraft Q&A about the 20% auction house fee and when it would be removed. Here's a clip.
Hey, love you guys. I miss you.
Chris Metzen. Voice of Thrall confirmed. All right, next question, please.
How are you going to follow that one?
I apologize to whoever has to follow that. I'm sorry.
Good luck.
Hi. Did you have any other ideas when you were implementing it, and when will it be removed, if so?
So the 20% auction house cut is only taken if you list an item and it doesn't sell. And it only applies to select stackable trade goods like flasks or herbs. And this was part of trying to nudge players a little bit to not make so many single stack listings, because you pay the same cost if you're listing a stack of 20 or 100 as you do if you're listing a single one. That said, it's a Band-Aid. There is actually a pretty fundamental rewrite of our auction house architecture that's required. And yeah, it's pretty long in the tooth. And I think as we've been able to increase concurrent realm populations over the years, we finally hit a point where actually one of the limiting factors on how many people we can put in a single realm at the same time is the auction house just crumbling under that load. So we're trying to just kind of pump the brakes a little bit, but we need to rebuild the foundations. It's something we're actively working on.
So not only were the fees getting removed, but the auction house was getting completely updated and redesigned. We didn't hear anything else for him for a year until yesterday when they just announced it and released it live on the PTR, so let's go take a look. So before you get too happy about this, or too upset, depending on how much you like change, what is the auction house? What would be ideal? Well, the auction house is just a list, a database of current auctions that you can sort by certain parameters and that you can filter by certain parameters. And you could compare this to something like Wowhead, where it's just a list of every single item in the game. Imagine if you went to the auction house and you clicked on gems and you drilled down into red gems and you had every gem available, and the ones that weren't up on the auction house were grayed out. It would be really cluttered. So this is a good move. Fundamentally, for most auctions, the way the auction house is set up is pretty good, particularly for non-stackable armor, and honestly, not a lot has changed there. In the new incarnation of the auction house, if you're a druid, you can go click on armor, drill down into leather, and then drill down into gloves or whatever, and you will see the same basic list of items available. But there is a cool new feature where you can click on a little upgrade button that'll only show you upgrades. So that's nice. It makes it more user-friendly for buyers. Get more buyers on the auction house, then we gold makers can make a little bit more gold. The biggest change is from the stackable side of things, where we don't have to deal with single stacks or any of that anymore because we have a market exchange, a commodities exchange. If you're leveling alchemy and you go on WoW Professions, it says you need 580 of a certain herb, you can just go in, type in 580, and it'll buy all of the stacks available, regardless of what their amount is, until you have 580 of that items. And it does do a nice little highlighting thing where if you buy a full stack, it has a bright highlight on that individual item, and then if you're only buying part of a stack, it'll kind of have a dull highlight. And if you are a super casual player, that's really it. That's all you need to know. The programming underneath is better designed. It's a little bit prettier and more current. It's familiar, but better. And the great thing about this, it's exactly what I was asking for. So I'm super happy. I wanted a market exchange for the reagents, things that sell very quickly, but the original auction house was pretty good for individual armor items and single stack crafted things. And that's what we got. It's super user friendly, it's intuitive, it's familiar, but there are a couple fun little tricks and some things that some people have some concerns on. So let's talk about that now. There are two big things I've been asked about. Is the 20% auction house fee gone? Yes. If you post up one sumptuous fur for 1,000 gold, you'll have to pay 200 gold in order to post it. On the new auction house, it doesn't have that limitation. And on the subject of posting fees, there are some little awkward things underneath that are happening. Maybe bugs, maybe not, I don't know. The normal posting fee for armor is 30% of the vendor price per 24 hours posted. So for 12 hours, it'd be 15%. For 24 hours, it'd be 30%. For 48 hours, it'd be 60%. Now, that's still in place, kind of. After the patch 7.3.5 change, all armor items now scale up. So an enemy that was originally level 35 will still drop eye level 35 armor, but because you're killing it at max level, that enemy scales up to level 60, and that specific item that you're getting is just the stats and everything are scaled up to 60, but so is the vendor price. Well, on the PTR, that's not the case. It's still costing 30% of the original non-scaled vendor price. Now, maybe this is just a bug, but the cool thing is we see both eye levels. In the listing, it shows you both the original eye level of the item and the scaled eye level of the item. And my hope is that this eventually gets expanded out into the world, because it's a big pain. If I'm trying to restock armor that drops specifically from level 35 to 40 enemies, when I go out into the world for vanilla zones, they're all level 60. I would love it if, like the auction house, when you hovered over an enemy, it said what its current level is and what its original level was. You know, Warlords of Draenor, Kata, Mop, and Lich King Transmog will sell, but it's just so expensive to post after the scaling changes that it's arguably not worth it. And we talked about that in Transmog Top 10 list. Go click there. But hopefully this will bring some people back to that market, which will drop down the price spiral that we've seen. And the other big concern is pretty stacks. A lot of y'all have been upset that like pretty stack flipping is going away. So if you're unfamiliar with what pretty stacks are, it's a term coined by the wonderful streamer It Skits. Go follow him, go check him out. And essentially there's two ways of doing this. First, if someone posts up 2,000 Winter's Kiss in stacks of 1, you buy all those out and you just repost them for a higher price in stacks of 200. You know, someone who's coming along and needs to buy 1,000 Winter's Kiss would much rather click 5 times rather than click 1,000 times. On the other side of things, we've got old world rare items like Cobra Scales or Primal Air, where often they're still, for some reason, subject to the 20% auction house fee. They don't sell very often, so people can't afford to post them in singles. So only the gold goblins, the richest of the rich, can afford to operate at scale and post them in stacks of 200. The items that you craft with these only require 8, so the way of pretty stacking those is just buy a stack of 200, post them for a more expensive price in stacks of 4 or 8 or 12 or whatever. With this new exchange system, that method of flipping isn't available anymore. If you need 8, you just go and it buys 8 out of a stack of 200. So it's easier for sellers and buyers, but you can't make gold from the inefficiencies of the old system. And that's the biggest point that I want to drill in, that method of flipping only existed because the old auction house sucked. It was bad for items like that. The new one works and is user-friendly, and if you need 8, you can buy 8 out of a stack of 200, and that's a good thing. That brings buyers in, that brings sellers in. Now, some people who aren't a big fan of change have said that the new auction house was designed without gold makers in mind, and here's my argument against that. So, if I go and I post 320 flasks, normally, I would have to, like on the old system, I would have to consider who my buyers are and how many they're going to be buying. There were lots of little decisions in there. You know, some people just need a flask for their mythic +10 for the week. Some people are raiding, and so they're going for 3 hours, and so you're going to want to post in stacks of 3. Some people are raiding for 4 hours, so you want to post in stacks of 4. Some people just like to have a stack of 20 flasks in their bags at all times, so you'd have to post a couple in stacks of 1 and 3 and 4 and 20 and 5 maybe and 10 and a bunch of different stack sizes so you don't miss out on buyers. Well, now you just go in, you type how much each flask is worth, and you just say create auction, and it's done. But more importantly, for gold makers, since I have a feeling cancel scans are going to be more important than ever, if we go in and we cancel that auction on the old system, on the old auction house, you'd have 100 different items. Each of those auctions, stacks of 1 and 3 and 5 and 20, would be a different item in your mailbox that you'd have to click and cancel individually. Well, now you just saw I just did 1 click and canceled everything. And check this out. This is the coolest thing. It's all back in 1 mail. Now, there's a bug on the PTR right now where you can only have a maximum of 16 stacks returned in the mail. The rest will come, but you have to reload for that. But like, if you're doing current content alchemy, you can post everything you can, all the flasks and all the potions, and rather than having 1,000 items in your bag that require you to reload your mailbox 20 times, you can just you'll have it all in like 10 or 20 items in the mailbox that you can just click open all and get them all back.
The pleasure was
Another
all
cool
mine.
thing,
I
if you're
got what you
posting
need.
an item and you're flipping, let's say, you have to wait an hour before your sales come in. So here, after the new auction house changes, sales are instantly in your mailbox. So I've got a little friend here, Dasan, thank you for helping me here. I'll create auction. Okay, go ahead. They're going to buy this item off the auction house. Cute little Volpera. Look at that little tricorn. All right, so they just bought my item. And the gold is instantly in the mail. Yay! 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 Right? The last bastion of 1 hour waits on mail is gone. Everything's instant. So if you're flipping, you're buying all the cheap stuff and you're selling it for more reasonable prices, then you can get that snowball rolling faster. It's easier to get into flipping if you're a new gold maker because you can see your profits faster. You don't have to log in once a day and just wait for your things to sell. Things will start coming in faster. Okay, so some of you people may not be convinced yet that even with more buyers and more sellers that you can profit from this new system, that there aren't any inefficiencies. The system's perfect. So here are some inefficiencies, some limitations that you could maybe take advantage of. Let's go to trade goods. Let's find something. Let's see, fell slate. Okay, Ember Silk Cloth. Here we go. So if I want to buy 200, it'll give a soft highlight, and I'm just buying part of that stack. If I want to buy 400, I'll buy these 2 stacks and some of this one. But if I have a friend who posts up some Ember Silk at 1,000 gold a piece, I can't just click on the expensive one and buy that. I have to buy out everything underneath it. Now, I don't know how you could take advantage of that, but people are clever. So there will be some situations where we can do that. But I do like that you can either type in here 400 or 500, or I can just click on here and buy out everything up to a certain price point. That's great. Another limitation with this, though, is you may notice that buyers can't see sellers' names anymore. You have a little check mark next to it if your auction is being posted at that price, but you can't see who the actual sellers are. So what that means is you can create your own markets. If you're a tailor and you're making shirts and you want to sell shirts for a very expensive price, or like limited supply vendor runs are a good example of this, mentioning shirts. If you get some old world items, you can post up a whole bunch of them at various price points and make it appear like there's a market there at a very expensive price, and then come along and post another stack at a much cheaper price that's still very expensive. Then that price looks more worthwhile for a buyer, and they're happier to buy something that appears to be cheap, even though it's more expensive than it should be. And because you can't see the buyer's names, they don't know that all of these listings are you. So some of you may not be convinced yet. Primal Shadow right now is listed from 1,000 gold to 1,600 gold, and it's got various stack sizes. So if someone who was new to gold making and was trying to get into flipping would come up to here, what would they see? They would see a decent spread of prices between like 1,000 and 1,500 gold, and they would probably just go to the Undermine Journal and see if that was a good price. Well, it's not. It's not. The Primal Shadow normally sells for 200 gold. So they would just absolutely not buy this because it's 5 times more expensive than it should be. But now that buyers see all of this information at once, here's something you can do to take advantage of the fact that human brains mentally group things. These right now are all one thing, and they're all too expensive. So here's what you can do. You can make a couple new auctions at 4,500 gold and 4,600 gold and 4,700 gold. Let's do 5,300 gold. Yeah, and let's keep filling this out. 5,650 and 5,800. So now, when someone comes along and they look at this list, rather a new flipper comes along and sees this list, they see the cheap things and the expensive things. So they say, I can buy all of these and sell them for $44.99, and then I'll make a ton more gold. Even though these are really expensive, they appear to be the cheap group. So what you can do, you can just max post all these for 1,650. This is 8 times what it's worth, and bam. So someone comes along, if they're trying to reset this market to something, you just created the appearance of where the price should be, and you can sell all of your stuff at way too expensive of a price. And the last thing I have a genuine problem with is how the auction house is handling undercuts. So the auction house works because supply and demand exists. If sellers aren't incentivized to sell things at a cheaper price in order to move them faster, then the whole system of supply and demand stops working. The invisible hand can't adjust prices to where it should be. And right now, if I just click on something else and then I go back to Volatile Air, the unit price that it recommends is the cheapest price on the auction house. It needs to be cheap. If it filled into 1 silver less or 1% less, that'd be great. but right now it fills into the same amount. But what's worse, and this is a big problem, is that we're using a LIFO system, or last in, first out, rather than first in, first out. And what that means, like, it's rotating stock, rotating inventory, where, you know, the English-speaking world tends to think in first in, first out, where the first item that you get is moved to the front of the rack. That's the first thing that sells. And then the newer inventory goes behind it. If you go to a grocery store and you want the milk that'll stay fresh the longest, you got to reach your hand all the way into the back of the fridge and grab that stuff. They put the oldest stuff first, so that stuff gets bought and it doesn't go stale. That's how most people think. And in fact, doing it the opposite way is, like, it's not allowed in at least American accounting practices. You can't use last in, first out. So with this, if I post my volatile air up, if someone comes along and buys 50 volatile air, they will buy mine first. Out of this stack of 217, mine is 200, and then there are 3 other people in there. They're going to buy mine first. If you are trying to sell something faster, you're willing to sacrifice your price. You're willing to lower the profit that you get by lowering the price and making it more attractive to buyers. If you choose to maintain your price, you're sacrificing how quickly it'll sell. If you overcut, it may not sell as quickly, but it'll sell at a higher price. Well, here, there's no trade-off. You can maintain your price and sell before your competitors, and that's not a trade-off that allows for supply and demand to work. It breaks the entire auction house. But there will be times where you post something up, it's the cheapest, your friend comes along and buys that many items from the auction house, and you don't get any sales, and you don't understand why. There will be situations where this breaks the auction house and makes people upset, besides the more theoretical, like, elasticity arguments. So last in, first out is a big problem. I'd like them to change it to first in, first out. But the rest of the auction house is pretty nice. There are a couple little things. You can sort by price here. You can't sort by name. You can't sort by the amount available. It's nice to find reagents to sort by the amount available, and then you can find things that way. So hopefully we can do that. There are some cool features like this favorites button that I'd like to see fleshed out a little bit more. Like if I want to do flipping and I want to focus on volatiles, a couple things that I'm familiar with. So let's say, yeah, these are good. I can then click on favorites, and it just shows me that. So you go out and you do all your world questing, or you do your raid, and then you're like, I'm going to go check the auction house for some deals. You just go here and it automatically pulls up your favorites. That's great. That's great. It lets you follow specific items. You can't follow items, though, if they aren't up on the auction house. So Primal Might, I can't favorite Primal Might because it's just a back to what we originally started with. It's not a database of every item. It just shows you the lists. So, like, it'd be cool if there was a way to see everything possible to favorite it at once. You can do that with add-ons like Trade Skill Master and TSM, where you put in the item ID, you search for the specific item ID, and then you build your list of shopping of things you want to keep a shopping scan lookout for. But here you can't. So that's a problem. There are some other little things that I'd like to see fleshed out with the favorites tab. But the biggest issue and the final issue that I have with the auction house, we need to go back to Primal Shadow. Is this stack of 1,000 a good deal? Well, I already told you it wasn't. But This is an inefficiency. This whole walling system is a way to take advantage of the inefficiency that there's no reference. We need if we're going to do this, and if Blizzard wants to make it user-friendly for the majority of players,
we want to tailor the auction house functionality to the way that most people use it most frequently.
Just as a quick timeout, I'd like to point out the difference between their mindset on the auction house and their normal mindset, which is...
We've made this experience something that will scale seamlessly from 1 to 5 players, regardless of your role, and the rewards are equal regardless of the size of your group. We want to let you experience this the way that best suits your playstyle. We want to tailor the auction house functionality to the way that most people use it most frequently.
And if Blizzard wants to make it user-friendly for the majority of players, we need to give players a reference frame. So if I were to try to sell you something for 125,000 gold, would that be a good deal? Well, if that item was a deep sea bag, no, absolutely not. You wouldn't buy it. 125k, no. If it was a Swift Spectral Tiger, that'd be a deal of a lifetime. You buy it, you flip it, you make 5-10 million gold, you tell all your friends about it. You're the hero, the champion, you're buying drinks for everyone. So, I'd like to see one other tab with something like DB Market, which is something in TSM that it's the average price over the past 2 weeks. Now, DB Market can be gamed, and so we might eventually want also some kind of global market price, like over the past 2 weeks, what has this item's price been across every server? So ideally, I'd like one column with the price on your specific server, a percentage, so you can see that Primal Shadow is actually 500% more expensive than it should be, and globally it's 300% more expensive than it should be. So your server is normally cheaper than every other server. Or maybe like that's how I think of it because I've been using Trade Skill Master for so long. Maybe a better option would be to have a list in here, down here, an item that says like average US price is this, average price on this specific server is this. Like something like that, a reference frame would let people make more informed decisions and see better deals. If they see that something is posted up really, really cheap, that'd be great. And then if we could also get something like that in the tooltip, then people, when they're out farming and looting, they see something and they're like, oh shoot, I just ran this old dungeon and yeah, I got 1,000 gold raw cash, but I also got 10,000 gold worth of items. That's awesome. I'm going to go to the auction house. I'm going to go make some gold. And that will bring more people, more supply, more demand to the auction house and let us have a more well-functioning system. So that's what I hope. I just want the best for everyone. I'm super excited about this. It took them a long time to get this out, and I think it's a really good start. So thank you, Blizzard, for thinking about gold makers and thinking about the WoW population as a whole. I appreciate the work that y'all have put in. So here's my request for you guys. First off, subscribe to the channel, like this video. It's kind of a long one and it's dealing with a very specific topic and some niche elements of that specific topic. So views will appreciate a thumbs up. But also, more importantly, go on the PTR while this is still in development. It's a lot easier to get big changes made on the PTR. So go sell everything in your bags. See if you notice any particular little funny things that happen. And use this bug report feature. Try to get 5 or 10 bugs submitted. So the WoW team can look at what people as a whole want. And I think that way we'll be able to have the best game possible. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Good luck and happy gold making.